Hello, sisters. I love seeing the competition between like the three of you who are always like first like, first comment. Um, Look, Momo has become so peaceful because she doesn't understand English and didn't know what the fuck I was reading. um, Holy shit, that was really intense. Like, I almost said like I was reading the Hitler stuff. My brain was like, I don't know. I was like emotional. Um, it was like real, and then the stuff like the rape stuff. The There was a couple of quotes from women who had been like at the very end, the incest survivors, but there was that quote from that woman from Harlem. Like I don't know, like just there was like really specific stuff. Like a lot of the quotes in that chapter were like really upsetting. Um Also, it's funny to me, like and my I don't know if funny is the right word, but you know what I mean. Um I've never actually read Freud like straight up. The only knowledge I have of Freud mostly is quotes that I've read from Andrea Dworkin. Remember that uh, the lesbian psychology's essays? Some of them, there was like 3 essays that like directly took Freud seriously and were like referencing his concepts, and I was like, "What are you doing?" Anyway, that and this is like my only conception of Freud. So it really makes like I know that he's like a misogynistic pedo mentality joke of a researcher or whatever, but like it's just funny that like this is my only knowledge of him, so he really seems like a clown. um Ice Goddess says I can't take him seriously, like I have to laugh. Yeah, exactly. I believe Dora. Oh yeah, was that his daughter or one of his first like patients or something? Like he sexually abused her, right? Anyway, patient. Yeah, okay. um okay, I kept the so this was like super intense. What time is it? It's now 2:30. I have to be at my next job at 5. So, yeah. Um I thought that was so funny. Like, okay, trigger warning discussions of like gay anal sex. When she was mentioning the Freud stuff and she was talking about how like having poop in your butt is like she was referencing Freud's concept of like having poop in your butt is like the feeling of something against a mucous membrane. Like you can't feel with poop. So what does that fucking mean for a man? Unless I misunderstood it. And I was like, when a guy puts his dick in another dude's ass, isn't that like the physical like cuz she made it sound such a like Freud's thing was like it's like a physical reality that a woman's vagina is like an anus. And I was like, isn't it a physical reality that a dude's dick is like a piece of poop if he puts it in a butt? I don't know. I just thought it was kind of funny. Anyway. Oh yeah. Okay. I'm gonna briefly skim through the comments from Sabrina. Are you here? There's only 3 of you here according to my counter. So I guess it's like just the 3 of you who the live chat has 4 women in it. Like this thing is lying to me. I don't know, whatever. Well, I won't address Sabrina's thing then. Lavender says, "Can you have body dysmorphia without having gender dysphoria? I don't really get dysphoria because I'm a boomer." Oh, is that the thing, Anung? You don't show up on the counter because you're shadow banned. That's interesting. Okay, so like, as far as I understand it, body dysmorphia, which like I also kind of rebel against the entire concept that there's like these little boxes that you can like put women into when it comes to the way that they like see their bodies, because it's like that's way too simplistic, right? Body dysmorphia is like you look at your body, it's kind of like an eating disorder. It's like you look at your body and you see something that isn't there, right? So Yeah. Some people are like obsessed that they need to have like bigger muscles, for example. They look at their body, they already have huge muscles. They look like the one that they see is not that, right? Um, or it's like an extreme fixation, a distorted view of oneself, says Strawberry. Thank you. Or they have like an extreme fixation with like particular body parts. Gender dysphoria, well, first of all, it's like it's the depending on who you ask and what era you're looking up the definition, it means different things. But generally today, the like difference is that it has to do with like sexual anatomy versus non-sexual anatomy. But like so much of it now is like if you looked at gender dysphoria in like the 70s, it would be like a literal obsession with like cutting off pieces of like your sexual anatomy or wanting to like have different pieces of sexual anatomy. These days, a lot of gender dysphoria is like it's not physical at all. Like what's that word for when you have like physical sensations based off of mental illnesses? It's somatic. Is that the word? Like, you know, if you have like a really bad panic attack, you feel like your chest is being crushed or there's like a brick on your heart or something, right? You have like a physical sensation. Like like it used to be kind of like, at least in the people that I talked to, it was kind of an expectation that you would have like somatic symptoms of gender dysphoria, right? Now a lot of like gender dysphoria is like it obviously is related to the fact that you have a female or male body, but it's much more social. Like you can never mention specific anatomy and never mention like, oh, a guy leered at my boobs, or like never mention specific anatomy in terms of like a social interaction, and it counts as gender dysphoria. So like I don't think it's because you're like a boomer that you don't understand. I think it's because it doesn't make any fucking sense. Anyway, that's what I have to say. Okay. I do just want to say about Sabrina. I mean, I guess she's not here, but I totally understand. No problem, Lavender. Like what? Like whatever. I have time to talk to you guys, but whatever. Um, what's res coffee, Anang? Like, I can't imagine. What does that mean exactly? How do you make this coffee? Um, like I'm thinking of camp coffee. Not sure why. Okay, wait 1 second. Okay, my roommate was just borrowing some stuff to do crafts with some kids. Okay. Um, I don't know what I was saying. Oh yeah, about Sabrina. I definitely feel this thing of the res coffee, cheap coffee. Okay. Anang, do you speak Ojibwe or like any specific indigenous languages? You do? Okay, cool. Like where I went to university, a bunch of the girls must have been at least, yeah, there was one indigenous guy that I knew, but he didn't speak. But a bunch of the girls I went to university with spoke Cree. Like they learned at their residential or the schools on the reses. Okay, about Sabrina's comment. I just want to address it. She probably won't see this, but I feel like I want to address it. Um, I've also lost a lot of my friends from lack of use. So I totally feel that. Like, um, I can read it. Like, I follow a lot of French women on Twitter, and I can like read what they have to say and understand it, and I can like pronounce things from reading them, and I can kind of have conversations. But like, there's a lot of vocabulary I don't know, which is why I like reading it because then I can like look up the words, like especially political feminist vocabulary. Like, I don't have that vocabulary at all. Um, don't leave, Mama. Yeah, get comfortable. Okay. People ask me not to speak it. Every time I speak French in Montreal, people just like respond to me in English, and I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, you don't need to be so mean about anyway. But then when I speak French to like Frenchies, because Montreal is full of people who are like French expats, they're like, oh, your French is so good, and they're really friendly about it. And then we like actually converse in French for like hours, and that's like nice and like, confidence boosting. Anyway, oh, interesting, Anang. I wonder which French Canadian accent you have. I mean, if I get to see you this summer, we can try speaking French to each other. Because there's like where my mom's family is from is like the bush, and it's like a rural French accent. It's not at all like a kind of Montreal French accent, They're trying to tell you something. I know. Yeah, I know. But like the people who are French who move to Canada are like super chill about it. They think it's like cute and like cool and whatever. They're very like. Anyway, maybe we sound Cajun to them. Maybe. But you're like from Michigan, so I doubt it. Anyway, whatever. Okay. The thing about Sabrina. So I was actually on Twitter last night talking a little bit about this book. Was it last night or the night before? Whatever. And I was saying that in a lot of ways, this book didn't hit me like the Dworkin that I knew. I think the last chapter did. Stuff that like makes your chest kind of hurt, like the quotes from incest survivors. Who, me? I'm not from Michigan. I mean, Anung is from Michigan. I just mean we're from like generally the same side of the continent, which is not close to where most Cajun French is spoken. Anyway, whatever. Dude, you have dual citizenship? That's so cool. My great grandmother, like where she's like French. Like she can trace her ancestry back to like French, like coureurs de bois, like the hunter trapper types from like the 1700s. Where she used to live, like when they put the 49th parallel down and they were like, yo, this side is Canada and this side is US, they like came to her family and were like, do you think that you're Canadian or American? And they were like, we think we're Canadian. They were like, okay, good. You need to like move that way a couple miles because like we're putting the line down here and you're on the US side. So I think it was somewhere in Maine. Anyway, they ended up in like northern Quebec, so pretty far. Anyway, whatever. My point was Sabrina. Okay. A lot of Dworkin can be particularly brutal. The fact that most of this book has been pretty like existential or metaphorical or cerebral and not visceral doesn't mean that it's not like it can't elicit a lot of the similar feelings. This chapter in particular was pretty visceral compared to the rest of the book, I think, and I totally understand having like a hatred of your body, thinking your body is dirty or gross or usable or used or whatever, thinking your body is like a conduit for harm or whatever, and then hearing this book being read or reading this book yourself can be like, I don't want to use the word triggering, but I mean like, evocative of like negative emotions and feelings, right? So I, at this point in my life, when I read this kind of stuff, yes, exactly. Useless Strawberry says the way she lifts up males believings, what males believe, going, look at this shit, they think this can be intense. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's kind of what I talked about, I think, in the last discussion stream we had, which was this idea that, like, I had this kind of like instinctual feminism. And I think I would like to rephrase that. I don't think it's an instinctual feminism. I think what I have is like, I was more attuned to unspoken misogyny at a younger age, right? I'm not sure why that is. I'm not trying to say I'm like better than other women or something. I'm not sure if it's like an ADHD thing. I'm not sure if it's like because of like I grew up quite isolated in terms of like not having a lot of family or friends that I spent time with. Like I'm not sure what it is, but a lot about things that my friends seem to take for granted and not question, to me, they like pinged a sensor and I was like, this is upsetting to me. Like reading this book, it's like all those little things that ping in your head of like, the idea that your female body is gross, the concept that like having a vagina makes you vulnerable, like these kind of things that are unspoken in society that might get your hackles up, might get like the hair on the back of your neck standing up, is being addressed directly in this book. If these are issues that you haven't had a lot of time to process, or issues that are currently in your day-to-day life upsetting to you, like of course this book can be upsetting to you. I don't think that, like, for me it's affirming in terms of knowing I'm not crazy. One of you said this in the live chat, in the last chat. I'm not crazy. Like, other women notice this stuff, right? Or like, I'm not crazy. There's like written down, like, men have admitted that this is why they think these things. This is why they do these things. It's not like my imagination or the imagination of these like crazy women that I know, Like, it's affirming in a lot of ways, but it's also like really brutal and blatant, right? So I can understand why it's upsetting. Like, I think it should be upsetting, Like, to stare into the void and to the void. I don't know. You know what I mean? Anyway, I just wanted to address that thing about Sabrina. Um Star says her speeches are much more evocative and materialist. I never really thought, what we could do for some videos? Instead of me reading stuff, we could do like a two screens, and like I could sit here and talk and react to like a speech by someone. We could like pause it and talk about it and stuff. Maybe that's a good idea for some videos. We still have a lot of books to read. Anyway, this chapter was Camus and Sartre's concept of the void. I've never read Camus or Sartre. Anang, did you go to university or do you just read a lot of books? I feel like you like know so many references. I mean, part of it also is that you're older and you were like, these are the books we read in like the 80s or whatever. But Useless Strawberry says, I think lesbians are better at picking up unfairness because we don't seek the male validation to the same degree and actually feel things about female bodies. Yeah, I agree. Like, oh, you have a library science degree. That's so cool. I would love to be able to do that now. It's the kind of thing where there's like not that many jobs and it's actually like competitive to get into now, but that's pretty awesome. So you've like done all your studying and living in Michigan. That's pretty cool to do everything in one place. You must know so much about like the local culture of your places. Oh. Oh. Well, that's fucked up. I'm glad you got to go eventually. Anyway, okay. Let's talk a bit about oh no wait, let's keep going through the live chat. Oh, the miscegenation. Okay. I'd be the first to admit I haven't read or researched a lot about like race issues or racism issues or whatever. But I do kind of feel like that's a little bit of an outdated word. I'm sure there's like more modern words that are being used for this. Okay, well, I do kind of know about some race issues, but it's like the insane crap that's going on TikTok, which is like genuinely what the fuck is going on. Like on TikTok right now, there are people who are like, you know what? I'm not going to talk about it. It's just like, oh my god, what the fuck is going on with the young people? Okay. Stuff. Oh, about the Holocaust and misogynistic medical research. Yeah. Anung, did you say that there was indigenous people who were practicing castration completely separate from like Indo-Christians? That's really interesting to me. I had no idea. It's funny, as soon as I put Momo here, the whole live chat is like different. Ojibwe did circumcision. Okay. Right, this Harvey Milk book. I was also like, it's funny that you know, like the IBSN number, the first two digits, but not the name. And now you tell me that you're a library scientist. I understand. I'm gonna try to look for it, maybe from like a different direction, because there's like lists of books that I know how to like research, lists of books about different topics. There might be like a way to research it. I don't know. We'll see. All the pukey stuff when they were talking about semen. Yeah, super gross. Yeah, I don't really understand semen stuff, like in general. What I mean is like, so in this idea that like women are dirty, and that if women are like sluts and they're like gross and dirty, that's like more attractive to a man. Like the way that I view it is that men want to like destroy and hurt, and when they see something that's like already a little bit broken or already a little bit dirty, that's like a trigger for them to like keep going, like do it more, you know? So like semen to me is so weird because it's like it came out of your fucking body. So you're the dirty one, but like putting it on a woman makes her, it's like further proof that she is like the physical manifestation that she is like a slut or a whore or whatever. Like it's like really weird to me. I don't get it at all. But also, I'm a lesbian, so I don't understand men or anything to do with male sex. So I don't know. But it's like a lot of stuff to do with men. Like this idea that like if a man penetrates a woman with his penis, he's like existentially afraid that it's disappeared. It's like you don't have object permanence. Like it's attached to your body, you can feel it. I don't understand how they can be so like fucking insecure about the whole thing. Okay, well, we covered generally the live chat. All right. I'm going to briefly flip through the chapter. We've been here for 20 minutes. What time is it? I need to leave here in about an hour and 20 minutes. And I would like to be able to lie down for a bit because I didn't really sleep last night. Boo boo, you've been napping this whole time, cutie pie? Cutie cute. Towards the end of the she did kind of talk about, like, she definitely talked about rape like in the first third of the chapter, but at the end we started talking a little bit more about female circumcision and then about incest. I was like, we really fucking need to read Rape by Brown Miller, which, okay, this book I've decided, and also Lesbian Heresy, my plan is to put trigger warnings in the titles and also to read disclaimers before each reading. Because, first of all, this I'm sure will have a lot of like disturbing and upsetting graphic descriptions of, you know, sexual violence. But also, just skimming through it and reading the titles, I think a lot of the language now would be quite offensive, specifically language to do with race. So I'm just gonna put like disclaimers and be like, this is historically, you know, significant, and like we can analyze this being critical of language while accepting the like, you know, still relevant messages or whatever. Because like even today when I was like reading the quotes from Hitler, I was like, holy fuck. And what do you think about that? Was that a good thing? Do you think that allowed for more like open dialogue, you know? Because even I was seeing like, what did I read? Oh, it was in the Disappearing L, where she briefly mentions that there was some women, I think it was, I don't remember if it was with race or anti-Semitism, but there was like one phrase in the book where she was like, there were women who used their ability to label someone as like a Jewish woman able to label someone as anti-Semitic, or a woman of color. Kate, please. Why, Momo? Say hello, Momo. Say hello. Or women of color who used their ability to label another woman racist to like stop dialogues and to just like make personal attacks against women they didn't like. There was like one phrase in the book that had that kind of meaning to it. And I saw this happening on Twitter like 3 days ago, where I can't even remember, some random Twitter account was quoting some author, and like I think the content of the quotes were pretty poignant. And another woman replied, anything by that author should be disregarded completely because she was anti-Semitic or something. And I was like, okay, obviously anti-Semitism is bad. Like, let's be careful about that and whatever. But I was like, so now we can't discuss like the actual content of that message because of like fruit of the poisonous tree or whatever. Anyway, I was like, is this actually like that productive? I don't know. I don't know if what I'm saying is going to be like construed in like a very bad light. I'm just saying like, and especially as a lesbian, I'd rather somebody just calls me like, you know, a carpet muncher or whatever. I know what you really think. Like I'd wanna like, another thing is like that I remember from like earlier days of Tumblr, like radfem Tumblr, like pre 2016, is like there actually genuinely was like a bunch of like Southern women who like unironically were constantly quoting like white supremacists. And it was like, okay, good. So now I know who the fuck you are and what you actually think. Like, thank you, you know? I don't know, anyway. Oh, that's an interesting way to think. Anung says it was just a different time. Progressive people were mature enough to use ugly words and analyze them. Today, people are just not as intellectually mature. Interesting. Anung says I put the asterisks in the vowels of the slurs. Yeah. I used to do that with fag, and then I was like, actually, I don't care. I've also met so many lesbians, like over the age of 40, who just like refer to men as like fags and stuff. And I was like, why do we think this word is like so special? It's like actually not that big of a deal for lesbians to say that. Anyway. That was one of the words that I came so far from being like thinking that I'm a gay trans man and being like shocked by the other like gay trans men using it because I was like, but we're not male, to being like, I genuinely don't care about that word. Anyway, whatever. As you all know, I'm like homophobic or whatever. So, Lavender says it's like censoring To Kill a Mockingbird because it has the N bombs. Ice Goddess says, how can you talk about it if you don't say it? Well, I think this book is a pretty good, I was going to like lift it up. You can't see, it's like an iPad. I think this book is a pretty good example of that. Like, she uses like whore, slut, the fuck, like so fucking often. It's like she needed to do that to get her fucking point across, to like discuss the issue like in depth on its face without tiptoeing around it. Yeah. Anung says it depends on context, but most people don't get that or can't get that online. That's the thing too, is like, okay, so I want to read after the summer, after August, which I think I will need like a recuperation period of like not being online. But this time I think I'm gonna like plan it, you know, like maybe all of September I won't be online to recover from my July and August road trip. But yeah, I want to start dipping my toe more into like when Black women specifically were publishing during second wave feminism. But like from the stuff that I've read before, like they use a lot of language that I don't think I should be like fucking reading out loud. So I think I'm just gonna like have to make like a little like protocol for myself. Like I can say this word, but I can't say this word, or how I'm gonna like go about it. Because I don't want to like sanitize their message. But also, I don't want to say offensive words I shouldn't be saying. But also, I don't want to be like cut together. Like somebody could take my video. Like I'm 100% sure with this book and Right Wing Women, someone could cut together me speaking and make me like say like pornographic stuff because I've said so many like sexually explicit words now. Anyway, yeah, Ice Goddess says I don't want to get kicked off of YouTube. Yeah, like I think pornography is a really good book and it's like super fucking relevant today, but I don't think I could ever read it on YouTube. Same thing with Scum. I would never read that on YouTube. Like way to get kicked off of YouTube. But my channel isn't really monetized. Like if I was gonna like take a step and talk about things that were way more offensive, the first thing I would do is take all the monetization down. I do have like a vague amount of monetization on my channel. It's pretty disorganized, but I never reached the threshold amount. I think you need to make like over $10 a month from YouTube ads to like get the money or something. I don't think I've ever reached the threshold amount. The only way I've ever gotten money from YouTube is super chats. So, anyway. I agree, Evan Wells. Also, Evan, just like, I've never seen your name before. And I don't know who you are, but just so you're aware, this live chat is female only. So, like, if you're not a woman, please tell us or please leave. One of those two. Okay. All right. We kind of gotten off base a bit. I mean, everything is peripherally related, but let's go through the chapter. All right. So, she starts off the chapter by talking about the dispossession of women, the dehumanization of women. No, I know enough. I'm just double checking because I've never seen this person here before. And it's not even like, because she did discuss Evan. She did discuss dehumanization and objectification in the last chapter, right? Here it's not. It's like a different, more specific type of dehumanization, which is like the inferiority thing, right? Like, I mean, especially when she gets into discussions of like or discussions, quotes about the way white people thought about black people, the way that white people thought about, or white or Europeans thought about Jewish people, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. It's like very specifically like with the imagery of like bugs infecting things and like this really visceral language of like them spreading their dirtiness and whatever. It's like a truly like physical material inferiority of these like, you know, lesser beings corrupting and infecting men or whatever. Like if I kind of take a step back from what we read about in like the first 1/3 of the chapter. Like outside of the nitty-gritty. Basically, I think what she's saying is like men see women as like these flea infested dogs with mange, with like a limp, who are like unable to walk, and they think, fuck, you're barely surviving, you're not worth the scraps that you eat, like might as well take advantage and like release my sadism on you because you're the perfect target. Like that's the general like message that she was like telling us from like the first 1/3 of the chapter. And then like this made me think of like a couple of different Tims who are sexual predators. Yeah, and they will hate her when they are done. Exactly. This made me think of a couple of different sexual predators from like the modern, like last couple of years that I've seen like on social media or whatever, who after after they have like sexually violated a woman, after they have abused a woman, their primary feeling is, "Oh my god, it makes me a bad person." Like, "Oh my god, what kind of like this is like a mark against me as like a sinner that I've done this bad thing. This is like has a negative impact on my mental health that I feel guilt." That's like their first fucking thought. That's like a lot of what I think this like the second third of the chapter is about. Is like, "Oh, I touched that dirty thing. I feel guilty about like making her more dirty," or like, "Ooh, I hurt that person who was already suffering. So like, what does that mean about me as a person? Like, let me have my like existential circle jerk now after I've hurt her. Like, fuck her and her feelings. Let's just let her sit there, like in her filth, in her suffering, and like that's her problem. But like, let me sit over here and write entire fucking treatises about how it's affected me that I'm like a sadistic piece of shit." Like, oh my god, Ice Goddess, yes. Yes. Maybe some of the older women don't know about this thing. It's the obsession with repentance. Yeah, it's like narcissistic. Ice Goddess says, like that whole post-nut clarity thing that has men sailing the realist stuff, it was horrible. Yeah. There's like this general social media thing happening. Like a trend where there's all of these men, they're mostly like under 25, pretty young, who are like have like this like post-nut stuff to say. So it's like honestly like I don't know how these women can see this stuff and joke about it, but they do. They joke about it in the comments. Like one of the ones I remember pretty clearly is like a TikTok of a guy and he's joking like he references like specific sex acts that he's done to his girlfriend. Um and if I remember correctly, they were pretty like he wanted to induce pain and make her like covered in his semen and whatever, like specific stuff to like, sexually degrade her. And then he was like, lol, yeah. And then when you're done, you don't even want to like fucking touch her because she's so disgusting. You just want to like stab her in the face, lol. He was like joking about it. And then all of these like both males and females in the comments were just being like, yeah, lol, that's what it's like. And I was like, do you guys not understand that like I mean, from their perspective at least, they should be able to see that, like, the level of degradation and humiliation and dehumanization involved in, like, the physical, like, connection they're having, in, like, the physical acts they're, committing with each other or to each other is, like, so extreme that, like, the immediate emotional, like, reaction is, like, negative. Like, it's just so fucking concerning. Um, it's so disturbing to me. But I'm also like, I talked about this. I haven't talked about that this since I started streaming again in the last month. But like last year when I was streaming, I talked about how I think because like porn has gotten so off the rails, um, and like sex positivity and all this shit has gotten so off the rails and like so institutionally entrenched in the last like 10 or 15 years. Like they're teaching like porn classes at the University of Toronto and crazy shit like that. Um, the girls who are seeing this on TikTok, like some of them are joking about it, but I'm sure some of them are being like, holy crap, when my boyfriend hurt me sexually that one time and then he wouldn't look at me or touch me after, and then he didn't answer my texts the next day, and then after he came back and gave me like, you know, bought me an Amazon gift or something, and then he was like super nice about it. Like, what was that in between phase where he wouldn't touch me or look at me or talk to me? Like, I hope that some women are like questioning shit. I think it's impossible that there's not a lot of them thinking about it. Anyway. So yeah. I also think that like this like second third of the chapter where it's a lot of this like men thinking about like, why do I do that? Why do I think that way? What do I feel about it? All this crazy in their head nonsense. I think that it's like it's intentional in a way, because if you're so self-involved, you can be like, oh, I feel guilty. But the level of guilt you feel by being self-involved is nothing compared to the level of guilt of like it. Like she references specific writers, right? And they're like, yeah, I'm imagining what it's like if I was a woman who experienced that. Or they're like, yeah, just looking at my own actions, like that feels like I did something immoral or whatever. Like the level of guilt associated with that is nothing compared to the level of guilt if you actually sat down with this woman and were like, how did you feel about your body before, during, and after this event? Like, how do you feel about your safety before, during, and after this event? Like, you know, it's like a tactic to actually avoid confronting what they've done. I think in a lot of ways, and I think it's also like another example of this idea that like men's gossip and nonsense is literal. It's like a literal issue, right? Whereas women's experiences are irrelevant and not something real, right? I've I'm pretty sure there was like a Callow exhibit going around in Canada. I don't know where it is now. I never went to see it. I think my roommates went to see it when it was here. I don't remember. Was this last year or something? I don't know. Anyway, I didn't go see it, but I have been to a museum in Mexico that had Diego Rivera stuff in it. Um, I knew that Frida Kahlo's stuff was about female pain, but I never thought about it in terms of like penetration, in terms of like sexual violence or anything. I feel like I just need to know more about Kahlo in general. Also, this idea that like well, if you want, Lavender, we can go to a museum together and shit talk Diego Rivera. This idea is of the uterus as a grave. I never really thought about it before. And upon reading this chapter where she talks about the concept of the uterus as the grave, or the uterus as like a symbol of both life and death. Like obviously she's reflecting on that only through the quotes of men, right? Only through the literary analyses and observations of men. And like literally all I can think about is that like these men are so fucking insecure. But like the place that life comes from also symbolizes death, because everything that becomes alive will one day die. And I'm like, first of all, that is so simplistic, it's super dumb. And also like how fucking insecure are you that like the moment you see something alive, it's like going to a sports game and the moment you see the first pitch or the first puck drop or whatever, you're seeing that the game is done and you've lost the game. Like how insecure are you that the first thing you see as soon as the thing starts is the end of, I don't know, anyway. Maybe not philosophical enough. um this whole idea of the smell of a woman. Ice Goddess says there is a place in men where the uterus would be, and it's called the audacity. Lol. Okay. This whole idea of of women having this really strong smell and being like super like okay, the whole idea of them being gross is obviously mostly like or almost entirely like in the heads of men, right? Or a direct reaction or like a direct consequence of the way that men do things to women. I mean, like literally physically do the thing to the woman, and they're like, "Oh, you're gross." After we don't do that shit to her, then. Anyway, um, but so obviously, uh, it's almost entirely psychological on behalf of men, right? It's just so interesting to me. It's almost medieval to me. Because I've seen these conversations like in the recent past, right? Ice Goddess is like they talk about like men talk about semen and then they call women gross. Maybe it's projection. Yeah. Um, yeah. I've seen these discussions in like recent or current times of like gay men making like really denigrating comments about women's bodies, and like it's one thing to be like repulsed by a female genital and not want to have sex with it, like that's fine, but it's another thing to grow on to like use like really humiliating specific like misogynist language to like insult all women generally because you're not attracted to women, like unnecessary. um like the whole thing with drag queens, they have like specific language that refers to women as like fish or whatever because their like vaginas smell like fish or whatever the fuck. It's just interesting to me because it honestly evokes like a kind of medieval thought process to me, because I'm like, women are dirty not because of a physical reality, right? But because of like you think of them as immoral because they are like the survivors of the horrible shit you've done to them, right? Like if a man is an agent who can make things happen and a woman isn't, and the man as the agent, you know, exhibits his immorality by victimizing a woman, then that woman has been corrupted by his immoral acts, right? Then that makes the woman like dirty, like no longer innocent, right? Whatever. That makes her like unclean and whatever. And it's like a physical sensation, like the smell of what you've done to the woman. It's like medieval to me. It's very weird reading about it like this. Lavender says gay men hated us the most until trans women said, "Hold my beer." Yeah, for real. Yeah. Anyway, also like, what was this one section? Was it Vandeveld? Yeah, this Vandeveld quote where it's like the semen of like the beloved man is like delightful and exciting, but the semen of like the unloved mate fills her with loathing. And I'm like, yeah, fucking right, bro. What fucking crack are you smoking? Anyway, like if that's what you're observing, what you're seeing is a woman thinking like, oh, this is the guy that I want like protection from, who I want to think that I like adore him, who I want to like lull into this sense of like, I worship you. So like for him, I'm gonna treat like him and all the gross shit that comes out of his body as if it's like holy. But with this dude who is physically like violating and attacking me, who I don't view in that way, I'm not gonna fucking pretend. That's what you're seeing. So like, wake the fuck up. What are you talking about? Um, Kate, am I crazy? Like, who is this? Is this Yeats person? It's not Yates, right? It's a different spelling. Oh no, it is this spelling. Okay, so it is Yates, and I was just wildly mispronouncing it the whole time. Yeah, Yeats. I don't not really into poetry at all. Um, yeah, wasn't exactly a feminist. No, I agree, but she did refer to him as the opposite of. I don't know. I'm not going to find it in here. Actually, maybe I will. The power of ebooks. Yeats. Oh, okay. She refers to Yeats as um, the opposite of Strindberg in virtually every way. Okay. But I mean, you can be like a lover of women and still be like objectifying them, right? Whereas Strindberg was like pretty materialist about his physical repulsion towards the female form. Anyway, I guess she means more in a literary sense of like their writing styles. Oh, interesting. I would be interested to read that. Anung says, William Butler Yeats. I think Dworkin wrote an essay about Yeats and Shelley's misogyny. That would be really interesting for me to read. Hmm. Star says she loved a lot of famous male writers, and then it was heartbreaking to learn how horrible they were. Yeah. I was at like a hangout with a bunch of musicians the other day, and then who were they talking about? Was it a composer? No, Schenkerian analysis is like a course that's taught. Well, there's like two levels. There's like basic and then like advanced Schenkerian analysis, which is taught in a lot of university music, like schools. And one of them brought it. I brought it up. I was joking about it, and then one of them was like, "Oh, but like he was so sexist," and like it's only relevant because he died like a few years ago, or like in the last decade or something. And I was kind of like, why are you bringing up that he was sexist when like literally fucking every single male involved in all of classical music was like overtly super super fucking sexist? And they were kind of like, oh. And I was like, what? I don't know. I'm not trying to like belittle Dworkin's position or whatever. I just mean like every single male involved in like any type of arts is like necessarily like working like off the backs of the women around them. So I'm like, I don't expect anything from that. Who the fuck is Ginsburg? Yeah, anyway. Okay, let's keep going. Oh, interesting. Hmm. Okay, well, I'm gonna read a quote by this Georges Bataille. I don't fucking know. Is this guy supposed to be is like I don't know which part of like Spain, France area he's from, so I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm gonna say Georges Bataille. Okay. Philosopher of the erotic and therefore classy guy. I love like the attitude that she writes about this guy. It's pretty great. Um Okay, this is the quote. The passive female side is essentially the one that is dissolved as a separate entity. The whole essence of this classy sex, quote, is assenting to life up to the point of death, end quote. So, again, honestly, this seems to me like I get that I'm not like a philosopher or whatever, but this seems to me like so stupid. Um, the whole point of sex or this individual man's erotic idea of what sex is supposed to be is like saying yes, yes, yes to everything. Like, you'd be willing to die for sex because otherwise you're not really living life. And I'm just like, how is that not like a self-serving prophecy for men to paint women as that? And also this idea that like women are essentially dissolved as a separate entity in sex. Like, in a way, it's kind of what Dworkin's been saying throughout the book, right? To be like penetrated, overwhelmed, consumed, like physically manipulated by a man in the act of sex is to be like depersonalized, right? But the way that he's saying it basically is like you're there for the use of men. And I'm like, yeah. Anung says the public Andrea was very different from the private Andrea. People used to know how to compartmentalize back in the day because survival depended on it. Yeah, I mean, she did prostitution, right? And she was also addicted to drugs. Like, I think there's a lot of stuff people didn't realize when they were reading her works or initially that I think a lot of women now know about. Um, I'd be really interested to read an autobiography, or not auto, a biography about her. Okay. I also think this whole like awareness of death, or like this like connection between life and death, is just like another way for men to let themselves off the hook when it comes to sexual violence, because it's like, oh well, we're all going to die anyway, like I'm doing this because of my fear of death, or I'm doing this because of death is just around the corner, so like it makes any act I do like kind of excusable, because like everything is not that bad compared to death. And it's like, dude, can you like fucking stop excusing everything you're doing for like one fucking second and take responsibility, you know? Anyway. Okay, circumcision. So, I have gotten in a fair few fights, which I generally avoid. This is going to be my last point before I wrap up, because I really do need to. It's 3:30. I have to be somewhere at 5 to leave here at 4:30. Okay, so I have like an hour from now until I need to leave. I would like to have like a mini nap, or at least lie in my bed with my eyes closed. Okay. Right. So, circumcision. Okay. So, currently, generally recently in human history, there's been this movement of like stop circumcising boys because of like makes my dick feel funny or whatever the fuck, I don't care. So, um for them I know, right? uh for them it's like, oh, you're removing a part of my body. For these men, it reduces sexual sensation. Like, I don't give a fuck, literally, you know. um it's autonomy, sexual sensation, I didn't consent to it, blah blah blah. Okay, fine. Then they're like, yeah, just like female circumcision, not at all like female circumcision. And when I've engaged in these conversations, I've almost always engaged on it purely on like an anatomical level, like which parts of the body are being removed and what are the consequences of it, right? So I would say something like, okay, trigger warning, whatever. Female circumcision is more like cutting off the tip of the penis, including the glands. Like, that would be the more anatomical, direct analog, right? And they're like, whatever, MRA bullshit. I don't care. But I never engaged in it on like, I have kind of been like, the purpose of male circumcision is like hygienic, at least in the West, right? That's like what we're told. And I'm like, can't you teach boys to clean their dicks instead of cutting off a piece of their skin? Like, are they that like stupid that you don't trust them to do that? But okay, whatever. Like, it's pretty it's pretty insulting actually to men. um and I have engaged in it in terms of like the purpose and the circumstances under which female circumcision is done is like culturally a thing that is meant to like hurt women, disempower women, mark them as like ready to be like sexually abused or whatever. Because like, no one who's going through that is having sex for pleasure after that. None of the men in those societies are like having sex with women for pleasure. Like, they like, I'm not a specialist on female circumcision. But from the stuff that I've read, like first person accounts by women who've experienced this, the men who have sex with women who've experienced female genital mutilation or cutting, as a lot of these women refer to it themselves, they think that if a woman feels sexual pleasure or arousal, it like sullies the act. Like it makes the act unpleasurable for the man or disgusting for the man or like something like that. It's like the concept that a woman could feel pleasure or desire from the sex act, which considering the mindset of these men is pretty unlikely because it seems pretty fucking violent to me. It makes it like the woman is like immature or like not morally in the right moral space to be having sex with her or something. Anyway, so I've kind of engaged a little bit on that when it comes to this discussion of like the differences between male and female circumcision. Andrea Dworkin, she cut through all that shit. She went right directly to the point. Male circumcision is meant to like keep their beautiful, precious, glorious penises clean, right? Female circumcision is meant to make sure that females cannot experience sexual. She doesn't even mention sexual arousal or pleasure. She literally is like, if the purpose of female circumcision is to make every single sex act a woman experiences to be like painful and suffering. Yeah. Like, for those of you who don't know, I think it's like, I forgot the names of the different systems because there's like these graphs you can look up of like FGM and there's like the 4 types. But the infibulation, like they remove the clitoris. She described it. They remove the clitoris and then they scarify all the tissue so it all like goes, like it all heals together. So like it's a huge issue for like kidney infections and urinary tract infections. Yeah, Hebo Wadera, she has got a Twitter account and a Facebook account and everything. She's written books, at least 2 books about this, I think. Yeah. Anyway, but the infibulation, like it makes peeing like a physically painful experience. Like they literally have to like cut skin open to be able to like put their dicks inside of the women. Like it's like insanely violent and painful. Anyway, the base purpose of circumcision is like to keep men's dicks clean or whatever. This whole like I'm more sophisticated and refined and like, you know, elevated. And the purpose of female circumcision is literally so that all sex is pain for them. How can you compare these 2 things? I don't know. And also, like, like again, I know that I'm like a misandrist or whatever, and some of you might find this like kind of upsetting, but like I don't care. Have you seen these MRAs who talk about male circumcision who are like, I have a memory of being like a day old in the hospital and like the trauma of my penis and blah 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 and like who knows how that impacted me like sexually or whatever. Oh, God, Ice Goddess is laughing. Yeah, and I'm like, what the fuck? And female circumcision is done on girls between the ages of like, I think it's like 8 and 16 or something. Like, it really depends where in the world they are. Because like sometimes also like if they're living in the UK, they will like go home for vacation in like Egypt or Namibia or something, and then they'll do it there. But it's like no, they were fucking alive and like no anesthesia, no disinfectant. Like so many of these women die from bleeding and from infection. Anyway, just the trying to conflate these 2 as if they're analogs to each other. It's like you really, really, really have to see women's pain and suffering as not counting for anything. Like there's just so many levels to it that they're not analogs in any way at all. Yeah, exactly, Sabrina. Sabrina says, I'm against all genital cutting, but they are not comparable at all. Fucking A. Like, if someone like cut off the tip of a dick of a man and then like inverted the skin or something and then made it so that every time he has to pee it's like super painful and he like can never ejaculate again, I'd be like, okay, I guess that's like comparable. And if that was happening to men, I guess I would care more. But like that's not happening. And it's not happening when you're a teenager and you can remember feeling that. Like anyway. All right. So that's like kind of the end of the chapter. Right, and then she starts talking about incest. Oh my god. I used to be quite close friends with an incest survivor who was actually a boy. Um, and I honestly have a lot of secondhand trauma from talking to him about that stuff because I was like a teenager at the time and he was like in his mid 20s. Um, so like reading the physical descriptions of what it felt like to like survive like a sex act as like a small bodied child with like an adult sized male is like, yeah, it makes me so enraged and incensed. Like, I. What a way to end the book, though, you know? To start with. To start with, like. I'm not going to talk about incest anymore because I have like a lot to say about it. Like, and I don't want to go off in that direction because it's going to make me really upset. Um, but to start with discussing oh god, what's his name? The War and Peace. Tolstoy. Yeah, to start with talking about Tolstoy. And like all this like literary metaphor and whatever. And like comparing his real life way that he treated his wife versus like his writings being like men having sex with women are like hurting them and that's bad. To all the way at the end being like the physical reality of female genital mutilation for women and like the physical reality of being like a racially like a minority racialized woman being like used in prostitution or like in sex prison, like whatever. It's just the book goes pretty far and I think makes its point really fucking like people a lot of women call Dworkin punchy and I think that's like the right word. Um yeah. In a lot of ways, this book was pretty interesting to me because it was much more like academic than the other books that I've read by her. Um, it honestly was like a dissertation on like the male conception of sex and what they've written down to like own themselves, like to self own. Um, sexually solipsistic, yeah, every single dude ever. That's one of the words she's using in the first chapter to describe Tolstoy. Um, Sabrina says a lot of her experiences obviously came out of her own experience. A lot of her ideas came out of her own experiences. Yeah. Um, in a way, it's kind of like I'm not sure which word to use. I don't want to make it sound like I think it's a good thing that she experienced harm, but like legitimizing or like I don't know, because in all of her books that I've read, she brings up this idea of like female reality, female suffering, the physical, material, empirical experience of femalehood is literally invisible or intentionally ignored or viewed as some kind of crazy mythical ideas that women have versus like men's random comments about the state of things are taken as literal fact when they have no idea what they're talking about or they're intentionally misrepresenting things. Like she talks about this concept all the time, right? Women's reality versus men's gossip. She talks about all the time. And in a lot of ways, all of her writings, because they're based on her experiences, are like a legitimizing version of like the female reality being put into words, being taken seriously by feminists. Um, yeah, that she had been raped. Yeah. Who was her lover goddess? Anung says people don't realize how badly Dworkin was treated on her speaking tours. She was kicked out of hotels, left stranded in major cities, with no way to get home, denied travel vouchers back once she arrived. I didn't know that either. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so anyway, reading the last couple pages of this, I was so like enraged, like a kind of motivated enraged that I was like, we should immediately start reading this book. But actually, I think we need to like emotionally decompress a bit. So as planned, we're going to read Femininity because even though this is like a serious topic that I think, it's feminist, it's related to everything else, it's like less depressing than rape. So we're going to read this. Then I'm not sure about the order between this and Lesbian Heresy. Might start this. Just because of the length of it. Lesbian Heresy is not quite as long as this book. I think if we start this, I'm confident we can finish it before July. This book, I think, will take us 2 to 3 weeks to finish. So, and this book, I think, will take us a minimum 1 month to finish. Also because it's like a heavier topic. So, okay. Oh my gosh, Sabrina, you know what's interesting? Sabrina's talking about leftist men are all pro workers' rights until it's prostitution. I know this is true because I've known quite a few radical feminists who have been politically organized in like Marxist groups or like unionizing groups or like socialist groups or whatever, like in universities. And a bunch of them would like show up to those events and try to talk about like female sexual exploitation and stuff like that. And then the men are kind of like, yeah, like fuck exploitation. And then just kind of be like, we don't talk about that here. Like, don't interrupt us talking about the important stuff. And the women were like, However, you know which one subreddit on Reddit sometimes has turfy stuff on it? Is the anti-work subreddit. Anti-work is like, anti-capitalism and anti-like exploitation and whatever. And once in a while, there'll be posts about like OnlyFans or like Pornhub and stuff like that. And like a bunch of women will be in, like, I don't think they're like radical feminists. I don't think they're like TERFs or whatever. They're just like, yeah, this is obviously exploitation. And then a bunch of the men are just like, oh yeah, of course. I'm just saying that specific subreddit sometimes has more TERFy stuff than any other subreddit I've seen. That I literally started following it for that reason. My one friend sent me like 3 different posts from that subreddit. It was like, look, they're kind of like being TERFy and nobody's shutting them down and nobody's kicking them off the subreddit. So I started following it. Wait, Anung, have you met Andrea Dworkin? Or you were just going to MSU at the time? So interesting. Okay, anyway. I need to go. What time is it? Okay, I have like 40 minutes to relax before I need to leave. Oh, I need to shower. Okay, I only have like 30 minutes to relax before I need to... How much battery is on this? I need this for work. Well, I need to charge that. Okay. I'm trying to pick up a work shift on Friday. Today's Wednesday, right? So tomorrow we might start Femininity. Or I might decide to take a day off from reading. Friday we will certainly start reading Femininity. What time of the day it will be, I don't know. Look for the schedule. Wait for the notification. Oh, last thing. I encourage you, if you've attended most of the readings, I always put the Goodreads description of like a link to the Goodreads page for these books in the descriptions of my videos. Go, if you have a Goodreads profile, use it. If you don't, make one and write a positive review for these books. Even if it's like one sentence being like, wow, this book like really clearly articulated a lot of the things I felt but didn't know how to, like, they were connected to like my real world experience, whatever. Even if it's just one phrase. Because a lot of these books, like The Disappearing Elle, I think it only has 60 reviews on Goodreads. Like, if you're not gonna like buy the book, which I don't expect many of you to, although there is at least 2 women on Twitter who told me they bought this book because of my readings. If you're not gonna buy the book, that's fine. But writing good reviews on Amazon or on Goodreads is like a good way to impact the author and also just like let women know that there's women in the year 2023 who are reading these books, who appreciate these books. When someone else looks at this book and considers reading it, your review might make a difference to them. So I think it's a pretty easy way you can show that this book, no, yeah, I don't support Amazon either, but wow, that's so cool. Well, like this, I bought at a women's festival last year. I'm trying to organize my finances. I'm gonna try to like have more like paper American money when I go to women's festivals this summer, and intentionally buy more stuff from the women-owned bookstores that are there. We'll see though, because also the exchange rate to American is not good. So, okay. Yeah. There's some in the Ohio one is not female only. Ohio Lesbian Fest is for like women identified people or whatever. Yeah. You can email me, Sabrina. I can send you links to some of them. The only ones I know about are in the US. Actually, no, there's a few. Yeah. There's a few. I know that there was like one that happened in Wales and one that happened in Scotland this year. There's a few happening in the UK, which I'm sure much more accessible to you, Sabrina, in Germany. But yeah, I know of a few that have happened in the US that are like under 100 women that are like word of mouth only. Like they don't have like a website or something. So yeah. You're in the US? Why did I think you were in Germany? Okay, dude, email me. I'll send you links to stuff. And then I'm organizing to give women rides. So if you're trying to go to some of these events this summer, email me. I have like a roster of ride schedules charging $20 to and from airports. All right. Which is like gas money. Because last year I didn't charge any money. I spent like a lot of fucking money on gas. Yeah, Mom was over there sleeping, so I don't want to like. Anyway, okay, I will see you guys. Let's say tomorrow we're taking a break. I'm not going to see you guys tomorrow. On Friday, I will see you guys. We're going to start femininity. Hopefully, we can do like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday thing. Okay. Bye.